Hi everyone, I'm Swapan, and along with me, Ishan would be doing one of the demo. So getting started with the impacts. Okay, so the key contributors for this whole work that has been going for long is the MPack core team, MPack UI team, upgrades team, blueprints team, and the Ambari management team. The team members' name I put over here. Moving forward, the agenda for today would be one slide for the Ambari overview, current limitations that we have in the Ambari, and the reason why we want to have the impacts, VNext architecture, a bit on the impacts, then the impact deep dive, Ambari 3x APIs, the new ones that we implemented to support impacts, Ambari 3x blueprints, they had also to change, and then two demos that we are going to do. So the first demo is going to be using the HTTP core and the ODS impact, which tells us that the HTTP core is the base impact, which would be having the base services like HTFS and Zookeeper, and ODS would be having the HBase, and this would be a dependent impact on the HTTP core. And the second demo would be on the Hello World. It would use two impacts. One would be the Hello World, and second would be the communications core. So the idea over here is that the message that we want to send out is that if you have any service and if you can pack it into an MPack, you can bring in that service into the Ambari, and Ambari would be readily able to support that, which was not possible up till 2.7, where we have a close association with the stacks that we support, HTTP or data flow. Okay, so moving forward, so this would be two good demos to look out for. And so this is the base Ambari architecture that we have Ambari server in the middle, and we interact either in terms of installation via Ambari blueprints or the UI, and then the Ambari web or the UI becomes the place to manage it. And we have Ambari stacks coming in, which is the one problem point that the impacts have come into picture, and then the Ambari agents which are running on each and every node. So this is more around the lifecycle management. Moving forward, going to the limitations, the reason why we want to have the impacts. So there is a one-to-one relationship at multiple places in Ambari. For example, there is one Ambari which is tied to only one cluster. One cluster is tied to only one stack, for example, HTTP. One stack is tied to only one service version. For example, HTFS having only one HTFS version that a single Ambari can support. A cluster can have a single service instance, again, almost the same thing. And then a given host can only have one component instance, for example, one Zookeeper server or one Hive server, those things like that. For example, one Kafka broker. You won't be able to have more than one Kafka broker on the same host, even though the host is beefy enough. And then Ambari supports only one hosting platform. So the whole MPack idea is around supporting more than one hosting platform. So other thing is that Ambari is monolithic in terms of a single monolithic stack that we have already seen. Ambari requires a complete stack upgrade. You have HTTP, and the only way you can upgrade is upgrade the whole HTTP stack. We want to have a single service or the component upgrade possible, and Ambari updates are required for refreshing the stack definitions because stacks are tightly coupled and bundled and released with Ambari release. Okay, so these are the basic limitations that we want to alleviate with the impacts. The VNext architecture, the vision is like this. We need it to be modular. We should be able to refactor things at the service level. Replace the monolithic stacks, HTTP for example, decouple the Ambari core release from the stacks. And that's another thing. And independent release cycles, modular upgrades, maybe at the service or at the component level. And the other important thing is the third-party onboarding platform. As of now, the services are closely tied to the Ambari, and we want to go ahead and bring Ambari to a state where we can bring in new services when we can package it as MPack, and Ambari should be able to support it. So this opens the floodgates for any service which is not currently supported to be introduced into Ambari. And the other vision is the multi-everything vision. Multiple clusters, we won't be demoing it today, but that's the overall, it fits into the overall vision that we have. Multiple stacks, so we are broken down stacks into the MPack, so this is possible. Multiple services. The work is like this, that finally the demo that we're going to show is we're going to show multiple clients running on the same host, which are coming from the different MPacks. So that way it is possible now. Multiple service versions, and then multiple host components on the same host. You can have same kind of component more than once, and then multiple hosting platforms. It's part of the design, but we won't be showcasing it today. So the new concepts, sorry, the new concepts that we are going to bring, that we should look into before we get into MPacks is the modules. So module is more like a service. So what we have done is that we have divided the stack into services, and each service is shown, or we talk about it as a module. For example, HDFS can be one module. Examples, HDFS or the Spark, along with the build number that they have, and they can have the independent release cycle. So this is the way we see the modular architecture, that we have modules for each service, and then these modules would be in turn used by the management packs. When we package them, a management pack can be one or more modules bundled together. It can be, for example, we talk about HTTP core management pack, and it can have HDFS module or the Zookeeper module bundled together, and that would be the MPack that will go out as a deployment model. And then there would be the MPack repository. So we need a place, given that we are not going to bundle it along with Ambari now, so we need a central repository or a place where we can go and download the MPacks. So repository is going to be the one place, which would be the catalog of the management packs, and it will take care of the interdependency and supportability of MPacks. And the other thing would be a higher level MPack, for example, a HSpace or the Spark MPack. They might need HDFS or Zookeeper running. So it will tell about the compatibility in general. That, for example, if I go and say that I need an ODS MPack, I want to install that. So it is going to say that these are the versions which are supported by this particular ODS MPack, and you need to download these particular MPacks in order to make it work. So so as of now, we have seen these are the more of a deployment time concepts, and this is the runtime concepts that we have introduced. One is the service group. So service group is more or less like the runtime view for a management pack. So it's a logical grouping of the service instances that we're going to have, because a given management pack is going to tell about these are the versions and the services that I'm supporting. And when you bring them up, we still need a logical grouping that we can have ease in terms of figuring out where they're coming from. So that would be the runtime concept, which is the service groups. And then the other thing, for example, we can say the core, we have the HTTP core management pack, and we'll say that when we are creating a service group, we'll say that it is the HTTP core service group or the core service group. So we will get an option from the UI in order to rename it, if we like. And then the MPack instance manager. So given that we are going to support multiple service, multiple MPacks and multiple service instances within the same Ambari cluster, the current user HTTP setup where we go and put in our installations, no more work. So we need a better way of handling what all instances that we are creating, so that we are able, so that it becomes easy to figure out which particular instance we are talking about. So we have implemented a separate library, which is the MPack instance manager, which is more like Ambari is going to call a particular command from there and get the instances created for a particular service or the instance that we are talking about. I'm going to demo this particular thing, that how it looks at the file system level. And moving forward, the VNext architecture is more or less like this now. There is Ambari, there is multi-cluster as part of the vision. Within a single cluster, we are going to have the MPack repository that we talked about, and we would pick up a given MPack from the repository, and then it tells about, as part of the recommendations, that this particular MPack needs this particular another MPack as a base one. So those recommendations will come in, and you will go ahead and install the MPack. And we already talked about that MPack is going to have the modules, which are the services. And for example, here we have the two MPacks coming. One is the course of two MPacks that came, and we created the runtime instances for them, which are the service groups. We created a core service group from HTTP core, and we created a streaming service group from the streaming MPack. And core service group has ZK, HDFS, Yarn, HBase, and streaming might have another Zookeeper, which is a different version of the Zookeeper that it is already packaged. So this is the multi-service instance that we're talking about, and Kafka and NiFi. And then the hosting platform, as of now, it is going to be the bare metal, but the hybrid is as part of the vision. And then, for example, a Kafka is having multiple brokers on the same host installed, which is the multi-host instances on a given host. And then, for example, if you have another version of the HDF, so you will only go ahead and update the streaming service group only, and the core service group, if the certification says that this version is supported, you would be able to upgrade only the streaming service group, keeping the same core service group, which is the deviation away and which is the deviation away from the whole cluster upgrade as part of the stack upgrade that we do, which makes it more modular now. And similarly, the other new hosting platforms can be there. And again, management pack is more this is more of a repeat, that it is going to be this is going to decouple the Ambari core release, replacement for the monolithic stacks, and support dynamic installation, and MPacks would be released separately from the Ambari as part of the MPack repository that we talked about. And the Hello World demo that we're going to showcase, that would be more into the lines, putting the word forward that this is going, the new Ambari is going to have first-class support for the third-party services that we want to get onboarded with. Other thing would be the services would be upgradable separately, unlike the whole stack upgrade. And MPack repositories, they're going to support the multiple. We are going to support the multiple MPack repositories. As of now, initially we would be starting with the Hortonworks repository, but then we can have other repositories also, given that they can follow the same. They provide the same endpoints for the APIs, and we can get the new MPacks that you have bundled as part of the third party from there. And search and discoverability for the MPack would be there. You can think MPack repositories more or less like an app store kind of thing. And the compatibility between the management packs would be there in order to figure out which one to install for the another one as a dependent one. Demo would be covering that. We're going to use the two MPacks, one is dependent. This we have seen, the cluster was the service group. Cluster uniquely identifies collection of the physical host, whereas the service groups is the logical grouping of the services which are coming from the MPacks. MPack was a service group. MPack is more of a delivery time concept, whereas the service group is a runtime concept. Deep dive. So let's start with two MPacks, which is one is HTTP core, other is the ODS. HTTP core would be the base management pack that we need almost for other services to work in the Hadoop world. It would be having Zookeeper, Zookeeper client, HDFS, Yarn, MapReduce, and Hadoop client. One deviation that you would see over here is that we have a separate Zookeeper client. So this is the client server separation that we have done now, which is again a new concept in MPack world or Ambari 3.0. So what is happening over here is that a given higher level service may like to have a different version of the same Zookeeper client or the Hadoop client bundled along with it. As of now, we have been using the same HDFS, same Hadoop client or the Zookeeper client. So this brings the flexibility that a given management pack can bundle its own clients to be used in order to interact with the other services. So this brings the flexibility here that we, for example, the ODS management pack can have its own Zookeeper client and the Hadoop client bundle along with it. So this is the client server separation which MPack would be bringing, and we'll be seeing it in the demo. Okay, so module definition, which is the service thing that we're talking about, would be built as a tarball. For example, HDFS 3.0 definition tar.gz. We are going to use these module definitions, these tarballs, and we are going to create a meta RPM which would be the MPack definition, which will encompass more than one module. Which would be, and MPack, you can see more or less like a stack definition that we used to have in Ambari. For example, we create HTTP core MPack, which encompasses HDFS and maybe Zookeeper definition into it. And then we're, there is going to be the module RPM, and then the MPack meta RPM, which would be the final thing that we begin with in order to get the module RPM when we start the installation. Okay, so this is the way MPack install layout is going to look like. For example, as of now, let's say we are talking about the root user HWX, but this is something that we have. This would be generalized at a later point of time, and we can see that when we install the MPacks, you would have at the MPacks user HWX MPacks, and then there would be HTTP core, and then the version for the MPack, and then the various services that are part of it. Yes, so for various components that are part of it. For example, the app timeline server would be having a soft link to where finally the modules have been installed. And the modules would be installed at the user HWX modules. You can see here, there would be Hadoop clients, for example, HBase, and each having their own version. And this enables for us to have multi-version of the same particular service within the same cluster managed by Ambari. And then you can see for the ODS, similar thing, that it is having the Hadoop client, which is pointing to 300B101. And similarly, this is the one, the Hadoop client 101, whereas the HTTP core is using the Bs99. So MPack Instance Manager, we already talked about that this enables us to have the multi-instance working within Ambari. So this is a replacement for the HTTP stack and the const select that we use as of now. And this is built as a separate RPM, but it is delivered along with the Ambari repo. And it is having the command line and the Python interfaces that we used in order to deploy our services. So we already seen there is user HWX modules, there is user HWX MPacks, and then the third thing is user HWX instances. That's the place when we are installing the services. This is the place where they finally get into. So you can see here instances. For example, we have created a EDW management pack, which is for the data warehousing, and it is having Hive, and Hive is having its Hive server. And then a Hive server can have more than one instance created within that, because it's the server name. It's the server name that we have created. For example, there is a default which is having the current pointer pointing to user HWX MPacks that we already seen, and then it takes to the particular version that we are talking about. Similarly, it can have another version of the HS2 running, which takes us to a different, for example, 100 maybe B2 kind of thing. So this is the way we are able to manage multiple instances within the same MPack and across MPacks. And MPack Instance Manager provides us with the flexibility of creation of a given component instance, modifying a given component instance, which would be as part of the upgrade, listing the configuration directories, given that we are having multiple instances of the same service of the components. There would be different configuration directories that needs to be maintained, and we've already seen the tree structure, which makes it very easy to reach to a given particular instance that we're talking about. And similarly, listing the version and the binaries and the log directories and the pit files for them. This is more like the library that I was talking about, that we have the command line arguments that we do. For example, MPack Instance Manager create MPack instance, and we provide the MPack name, which may be EDW or HTTP core, MPack version, particular version that we are talking about, because MPacks also would be having versioning as part of the new MPacks that we generate for the same type. MPack instance, the instance name that we want to give. Subgroup name, this is for the future proofing. And then the module name, well, which particular module are we talking about, Hive or HDFS, and then the component. For example, do you want to install all the components that are part of a given service, which is the host, which is the service components, or you can pass in a map what all you want to install and provide the name for them, because there are going to be multiple Zookeeper servers now, and you might want to name them in a way that it is easily recognizable, and they can be on yeah. And then moving on to the Ambari CX API. Given that we have talked about so much, the current APIs are not sufficient enough to support that. There is going to be a registration API where we talk about the registry that we are going to take the MPack from. I'm going to share the slide so you can have a look later. I'm just going through so that we reach to the demo as quickly as possible. And then we have the MPack's APIs defined for them in order to get the new MPack that we have decided to install. And then the service group APIs. So this is a new concept that we talked about, which is the runtime concept in order to group the service logically, which are coming from a given MPack. So there is one-to-one mapping between a given service and the MPack that it has come from. So the level would be clusters, cluster name. You would have seen earlier services at this point, and now there is service group name, and then the services that are part of it. For example, you can have service groups HTTP core and the service Zookeeper in it, and then HTTP core and service HTFS in it. And the host component. So this is one thing. This change has enabled us to have multiple host components of the same kind on a given host. So the change that we had to do is that to move from the name to the ID. Because, for example, if there is Zookeeper server, you can have this, given that Zookeeper server is the key, you can't have it more than once on a given host unless we go beyond and use the composite keys. So we have moved the host components from the name to the ID based thing now. So you can see here the service component will say that there is service group core, service is Zookeeper, and component name is Zookeeper server. And the associated host component would be C1 host, host name, host components, and ID number 10. So this enables us to have the multiple host components of same kind on a given host itself. You can have a look at this point where we have the service group dev, and we have created Zookeeper dev as a service, and the service component is Zookeeper server, and it is on two hosts, host 1 and host 2, which is having their host component IDs as 12 and 20. Yeah, I'm not able to see it clearly from here. And at the same point, you can see that the Zookeeper dev, there is Zookeeper prod here. Both are of type Zookeeper service. And then we have Zookeeper server here and Zookeeper server here. And then the same Zookeeper server is going on the same host with a different component ID. So this enables us to have more than one instance of same component on same host. Ambari 3x blueprints also had to be changed in order to comply with the new MPack changes that we were having. So moving forward, I assume that most of the people would be familiar with the blueprints in general. Prior to Ambari, so this is a way that we can, another way of deploying the Ambari cluster. And prior to 3.0, deployments referenced a given HTTP stack because we were tightly coupled with it. Configuration was set at the cluster level. Yeah, the other thing that I want to mention is that the services configurations as of now we were having it at the cluster level, but now given that we are multi-instance and multi-component instance, we have moved the service configurations to the service instance level. And then there is limited support for the MPack based deployment pre 3.0. The new MPack, with the new MPack thing, blueprints are aware of the MPack deployment model, and then there can be two options: either the manual option, which makes the REST calls to the Ambari server to deploy the MPack, or we can just refer to the MPacks and the blueprint processor downloads the MPack for us. And the structure, more or less, the way blueprint team has worked is that they have tried to maintain the previous structure so that there is backward compatibility. For example, it says that there are host groups and these are the components that we want to install, And the associated cluster creation template talks about the MPack instances that we want to install and the URL we're from to take a given MPack. And then the MPack mappings, which tells about the each component and which particular MPack it is coming from. So we would be getting into two demos. One would be the HTTP core and the ODS demo, and the demo would be using the MPack that it is using is having the following service associated. The point to note here is that the Zookeeper client and the Hadoop client exists in both MPacks. And finally, as part of the installation, we'll be able to see both the clients available on both the hosts. Okay. Share screen. Oh, we need to stop share.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Ishan. I'm an Apache committer. And now we'll be demoing whatever Swapan talked about. So there are a couple of MPacks we are going to go through, and we are going to deploy our cluster. So this is the initial UI flow.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, we can just.
Here. Okay. So we'll start with the relevant part of the MPack UI install flow. So I have two hosts over here, which I have already registered, which are already in the cluster. So we start from over here. This is just some warning which shouldn't impact UI flow. So there are two options over here. We can download everything using the public repos or the local repos. We have an option to use a proxy over here. So let's just go ahead with the standard public repo over here. So in the next step, we'll be selecting the MPacks. So there are two ways. We can either select the entire MPack over here, for example, the ODS, Operational Data Store MPack, and the Hadoop Core Platform MPack. So, or what we can do is we can click on Customize, and over here we'll have more final granularity, so that we can select a set of services. For example, I want to select HDFS and Yarn. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it any better? So we can select a set of services, say from the HDP core MPack. So here are the MPack versions that I have registered. So I have two versions over here. So I want to select the latest one, and this is like this. So if I select, say, Yarn over here and HBase from over here. So for now, we'll select the entire MPack. And for the ODS also, we'll select the latest version, and we'll select the entire MPack. Click next. So this is where the MPacks are being registered. To show what they look like, they look something like this. So this is the registry file, which contains our multiple MPacks. The first is the Hadoop Core Platform, and the second one is the ODS, which says that the dependencies upon the HTTP core. So in order to install ODS, we also need HTTP core. And this provides the URLs from where the MPacks.json will be downloaded. So here the download has finished. We can click on next. So this is the assign master step. This is probably similar to the previous screen you might have seen in the earlier versions of Ambari. The major thing that has changed over here is earlier we used to have a stack advisor which used to advise as per a single stack. But now we have, since we have multiple MPacks, we have an MPack advisor which is more multiple MPack aware, and based on multiple MPacks, it recommends what are the components that could be on different hosts. Next screen, this is pretty much similar to what we have, the assign slaves and clients. Then we customize our services. So this is probably similar to what we saw earlier, and we have an option to change whatever configs we desire. Click on next. In this screen, we can review. This is the review page, which provides us what are the services we are going to install. And if I click on deploy, this will begin the UI deployment. So as we see, the installation has begun on a couple of hosts. So this is going to take a while. So I have deployed cluster already with multiple MPacks. I'm going to go ahead and show you what does it really look like. So this is similar to the 2.7 screen that we saw earlier. And so here, the only difference you might see is that you can see that HDFS is coming over here from HDP core, and a service like HBase is coming from the MPack called ODS. And if I go to hosts and I click on hosts, we can see that as Swapan earlier talked about service separation, the client separation from the main services. So Hadoop client is a new service, and there are two Hadoop clients. One is both of them are coming from the either MPacks. One from HDP core and the other from ODS. So this is the basic installation flow for deploying multiple MPacks. Now to go ahead and see how easy it is to plug and play, we'll have Swapan. I'll hand over it to Swapan again. He will show us that we can just package any MPack with any kind of service, and you'll be good to go. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Stop share. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So this is the second demo that I was talking about. So this is the demo which is going to use the two MPacks that we have created, Hello World MPack, and which is dependent on the communications core MPack. And okay, so I've again brought it to the page of the host, which takes a bit of time. So just to save that time, and this is the software registry that it looks like. That we have these scenarios. There is a Hello World app, which is the Hello World application, which is having the scenario MPacks. Okay, sorry. How about now? Okay, so which says that the scenario is that in order to use the Hello World app, we need a communications core MPack kind of thing as a base service running, and the Hello World MPack says that I'm coming from the URI, which is the locally deployed thing as of now, which is having its own MPack.json, and then the communications core telling about where from the MPack is coming. Okay, moving forward. So two hosts I'm using. Moving forward. So the public repository, and then it says that there are two MPacks here, Hello World and the communications core. If I select Hello World as part of the recommendation, it is going to select the communications core MPack also, because that's the only way it can deploy. Okay. So let's retry. Okay, so it has installed the two MPacks. It tells about, so Okay, the other thing before we go forward, which I missed. Yeah, so this is the MPack structure as of now. There is communications core, which is having two services. One is the communications and the other one is communication clients, the separation that we talked about. And the communications service has communications helper and communication master, master and slave component, and communications clients is having communication client. And hello world is having three services. One is the hello, other is the hello clients associated, and the other one is that it is saying that I'm having my own version of communication clients, which is in order to interact with the communications core. So as of now, we see the communications master and the hello master coming here on two hosts. These are the helpers that are going and the clients. Moving forward, accounts and the configurations over here. For example, it says that hello delay and hello to. I'll just explain this, and the other one would be communications, which says the communication heartbeat interval. So these are the demo apps that we have in order to showcase that how easy it is to bring in new services, and this can be the starting point to try bringing in your services into the Ambari. So starting the deploy, this shouldn't take much. Yeah, so it is done with communications client, hello client, and communications client installing the hello master, and we're done. Okay, next, complete. Okay, now we can see that there is MPack communications core. These are the components coming from it for the hello world, hello master, and hello helper. Going to host, it says that I'm having communication master, hello master here. And then it says that I'm having two communication clients, one coming from the HTTP, one coming from the communications core MPack, and other coming from the hello world, which was having its own version of communication client implemented. A little bit forward. Yeah, so just to get into a bit how the processes. So these are the basic processes that are running, and here it says that the hello configuration directory. So these are the wrapper or the libraries that we have created that we can get the given component configuration path by passing in the MPack name and the instance name and the module name, which is more like the instance manager that we were seeing. Then we can have a wrapper call in order to get the log directory, PID directory for it, for a given MPack, for the given service instance by passing the whole path of MPack instance, service instance, and the component instance, and then the hello home and the hello MPack directory. And which is more like if you've already dealt into bringing in new service, which is the install flow. Install flow here, for example, we install by saying a create components instance, which creates the MPack instance, and then the start for it. So this can be a good starting point in order to bring in new service and look into it. Yeah, so yep. So this is what we had to present for the MPacks. And if you have any questions, I would be around. And sorry for taking too much time. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Swapan, Ishan. Before we get started with the next two talks, wanted to quickly pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Would it be possible to have, it seems like it's possible to have